Welcome to Catch Outdoors. I'm your host, Captain Rob Modis. This podcast is about living and playing in the great outdoors, especially down in the most southern region of the continental U.S., the Florida Keys. Catch Outdoors is hosted by Spotify, also brought to you by your favorite podcast network. So kick back, get a taste of my Florida. This week's episode of Catch Outdoors is number 124. Wow. Titled Cooking Your Catch. Hello, all. Good morning, afternoon, evening, depending on when you're listening to this on Tuesday. By the way, for those that don't know, the podcasts are delivered at 5 a.m. on Tuesday morning to all the different podcast delivery services, networks, and whatnot. So whenever you want to listen after that's great. But if you want to catch it early, you can do that too. I'm going to try something different. I don't want to say radically different. It isn't radically different for me, but just different. For those of you that are familiar with my my history, way back when I hosted a radio show on Fort Myers Radio, ESPN Radio Fort Myers. And it was a local fishing show. It was every Saturday. It came on from 7 o'clock in the morning till 10. Hell, before that, it was 1 hour. And then it was 2 hours. And then it was 3. And then it was 2. And then it was 3. It bounced around quite a bit. Ultimately, it was a 3-hour show. And it was live. And I didn't have a lot of process and plannings. I made some notes about what happened during the week. Or something interesting like a tournament was coming up, or somebody did something interesting in the fishing community. I would certainly sit down and talk about it. But it was mostly a live show. It was live call-in, which means you just basically ad-lib and pray. And I thought it'd be more interesting to do this show that way. I don't have callers, but things pop into my head. And I used to, up until now, I spent the better part of the week just writing a script, if you will. Some of it. Some of it's not scripted, but some of it was. Obviously for advertising and things like that to talk about something that's coming up. But I decided to change it a little bit. Because I can. So what I'm going to do this week is just kind of play it live and everything except for useless information, which will be selected and read as we go. But up until that point, though, it'll just be kind of a live show. And I'm pretty excited about that. I am getting overly tired of just writing copious notes, all these little details. I think it's much more fun to wing it, quite frankly. I did public speaking for years, and it's the same thing. Most people will tell you that almost all my public speaking and virtually all of my classes, I had very few notes in front of me. I just talked about what I know, and that's usually the best way to go. So I'm going to try that this week, so prepare yourselves. I usually start out with some weather, and that's where we're going first. Why not? This past week was not bad. It was cool, very cool. From the time that you listened to the podcast last Tuesday, from that day forward, it was chilly in the morning, in the 50s for 2 days at least, and then barely 60 on the third day. But it warmed up nicely in the day. Sun came out, pretty, blue skies, tiny little puffy white clouds. It was pretty much what you expect to see in the winter instead of what we have been seeing, which is a lot of overcast and gray. So it was kind of nice to have that happen. The wind, it blew, let's see, I taped that podcast last Sunday. So it was like Sunday, Monday, and right up until Tuesday morning when it let down. And I did get out and do a little fishing on Tuesday, thanks to the wind letting down. I'll get to that in just a minute, but I was surprised, actually. I thought we were just going to get a blow right on into the middle of the week, but it let up for one day, and then it started again. I'm recording this on Sunday afternoon. Right now, we just had a monster thunderstormy type front blow through all of the west coast of Florida. If you looked at the radar, it hit everywhere, basically. In the Keys, we had some thunder and lightning. We had rain. We had wind. They had a gale warning out. It sounded like it was blowing, but I didn't go outside to see what's happening. But it was pretty crazy and raucous for about, 2 hours, I guess. And now, what time is it now? 12:30, it's already starting to wind down. They said by 2 or 3 o'clock, the sun might be back out here. And things should shut down fairly quickly after that. There's another front due on Monday, tomorrow. And into Tuesday. So the wind's going to blow again. More gale type stuff is being called for. It's fun. And then by Wednesday, the breezes should start to drop down, and I hope so. We have guests coming for Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and I would very much like to take these ladies fishing, old customers of mine, which have become friends. And as I say on the podcast, that happens quite often with some of my past customers, my clients, if you will, charters. But I'm looking forward to it. They have never been up in the backcountry, so I would really, really like to get them up there and kind of show off what's going on up there in Everglades National Park because it's pretty, you know. The temperatures for the upcoming week are supposed to be, let's see, mostly 71 to 75. I saw a 76 actually this morning. Later in the week, probably Thursday or Friday, get 76 with decent temperatures. Our normal winter, 60-something degrees at night, humidity, low humidity. So, it's February, and we're going to get this probably for the rest of the month. And then we get into March, we might actually get a wind pickup. God, I hope not. I really do. But anyway, it looks pretty good. Like I said, it's going to be pretty windy the first few days of the week here, and then it's going to get better after that. So let's see. Tides. Oh, the tides will be great. Tides, let's see. We are coming up on the new moon, February the 9th. Today's what, the 4th? Yeah. So February 9th, we have new moon. And new moon is very much like full. You don't see the water level change as much. In other words, the high is so high and the low so low on the new, but we do get really good moving water for about 4 hours. And that'll last about 3 days on either side of the new moon. So we have about a total of 7 days where you get really decent stuff. Then you go through a little lag, and then the full moon comes out, and everything's all wonderful again. But I want to make it clear, though, the full moon you get more of a flux or a feel of the flux in the water. So if you've got, full moon, you might get 3 feet of water moving around, whereas you might get 2.5 under a new moon. So just so you know, it makes it interesting fishing. But I'll take anything I can get as long as the water's moving. So that's it. Tide, moon, yeah, I kind of covered that. Tourist, they're here. Come on down. Everybody else is here. As I've told you in the past, I have learned to shop very, very early in the morning if I'm going to go over to Publix and stay away from it in the afternoon to evening. Same thing with the restaurants. We were talking about going out tonight, Sunday night, to one of the beachfront restaurants, and Janelle changed my mind by calling me on the phone from Publix and said, "How would you like some chili or spaghetti?" I said, "Either one. You pick it. On the cool nights that we're enjoying, this is the time to have that kind of stuff, because when summer comes, the last thing you really want to eat is a bowl of chili around here." So if you're planning on coming down, you need to book it now. So if you're planning, especially fishing trips, there's a mess of captains down here, and they're all pretty good. Most of them I've run into, they're genuine. Let's just put it that way. Not a lot of pirates, but they're booked, and the people come to town. I mean, they just suck it up, and they might even book way ahead too. I know the resorts help book. So if you're planning on doing something recreation wise outside, you really need to get on it if you're coming down anywhere near the end of February, and certainly for March. When spring break starts, it really gets crazy. Not just here, pretty much everywhere in all of South Florida and Southwest Florida for that matter. So get ready. Okay, fishing report. Last Tuesday, so that was podcast day. I got up early. It was cold. I ain't kidding you. I mean, for us, it was in the low 50s. We're talking 53, 54 degrees. That's cold in the Keys. Y'all can quibble over it if you want to, but we don't live like that here. So I decided to wait till the sun came up and then put on 3 layers, which I did, and including my buff and everything. I don't. Everyone will tell you back when I was guiding in Fort Myers, I did not wear shoes. I wore flip flops to the dock. I didn't wear shoes in the cold because I for some reason it doesn't bother my feet. I don't know why, but boy does it bother the rest of me. So I got all duded up, went out and got the boat ready, put it in the water, ran up in the back, 63.7 degrees. Is that right? That doesn't sound right. 67.3 degrees. Yeah, that's what it was. 67.3. Yeah. cold. So I'm up there and there is no sign of nothing. And there really isn't. There were like three birds looking at me going, what the hell are you doing up here? The breeze was still up to 10 to 15, but it was definitely slowing down. That's why I went. The forecast said by afternoon it would be pretty much calm. They called it right. I got to give them credit. When I got up there, it was blowing out of the northwest, swinging over to north, and then it was a little choppy going up and not. I mean, I've been in worse. Up in the back, the water looked good. That's one of the weirdest things about fishing up in the Everglades. No matter what that wind does, the area I'm fishing in apparently has a sandy, rocky bottom. I can tell that when I put the power pole down. I can hear it crunch. And apparently that doesn't stir up real bad like the muddier water does out in Florida Bay. The waters north of Islamorada are terrible. When the wind blows, it just turns to chalk. So I was happy about that. Although my internal brain, my fishing brain was going, this is not going to work. And only because I saw the temp. And I also noticed there's no rain bait. There's really nothing around. A few little mullet splashes. I'd see that. And that was about it. So I fished and I didn't catch a thing for 2 hours. I got up there around, I guess it was close to 8, sunrise is a little after 7. Yeah. So it's probably about 8 o'clock when I got up there. And I chunked some artificials around. I had one nice bump. I think it was probably a jack. That's what it felt like. And maybe even a snapper. Could have been one of the two up against the bushes. And I went around the corner. I sat in the sunshine. I got warm, took off one layer. I texted Jonelle and said, guess what? There ain't no fish. About 10 minutes later, I stood up and made a cast at the point that I'd been sitting next to for, 30 minutes or so, and got a tarpon. So I was just like, okay, so there's one here, by golly gosh, and fish is artificial. The Gulp swimming mullet, that crazy pink shade I'm using now. That thing, man, it gets hit. And he hit it hard. It wasn't a huge tarpon. It was your junior tarpon. 30 inches. I laid him down on the deck for a second. Oh, that's the other funny part. I was going to take a photo. I laid him down and put the rod down, so you could get like a size idea of what he was. When you're out by yourself, it's kind of hard to take a selfie. And I want to get him back in the water anyway. So I put him on the deck right next to the rod, got my phone, aimed it at him, and he made like 3 hops off that deck and went right back in the water. So the only picture I got was a blurry, like a silver blur. Oh, and the rod looked great. But anyway, then I worked around the corner. I got another nice hit and a miss. And honestly, that was pretty much it. Again, I don't know where that little tarpon came from, but I sure was glad he kept me from getting skunked. There's a little creek nearby, and I went through the creek, which, by the way, was really daring. The creek is narrow. I think you might be able to pass 2 flats boats in it, barely, if one pulls way over. The deer flies were horrendous. I have never experienced it like that. I don't know if it's because we hadn't had any rain for 8 or 9 days when that happened. The temperatures were cool, but I have no mosquitoes, no no-see-ums. I was descended on by deer flies, which, for those of you that are familiar, that's really fun. So I got to the canal as quick as it would let me, popped out on the other side, speeded the boat up to blow all the extra deer flies out. Put the trolling motor down and worked over on an edge that I had been wanting to work, quite frankly. And I saw 3 big old snook come around the corner, and they saw me. They turned away. I made a nice long cast out in front of them. I worked the lure a little bit right over their heads, basically. And one of them turned and followed. But by the time he got back to the boat, he goes, "Oh, it's you again." And he turned off and left. Caught 4 kudas. The biggest one was probably 24 inches, I would say. I call that a nice one. They're fun. I saw one huge cuda laid up in the grass, but he wasn't the least bit interested in eating a lure. And that was the day. Ran back home, got home by about noon. So spent about 4 hours out there fishing. By the time I got back to the dock, the winds had laid down, the sun was out. And by the way, from the time I left the dock to the time I got back to the dock, I did not see a single boat, which That's pretty wild, especially in February. I'm sure if I'd gone down toward Alamorada or Tavernier, I might have seen somebody, one of the guides or somebody, but nobody was as daring as I was, apparently, on last Tuesday. Let's see, I didn't do any reading again. I worked on my book, worked on it all week. As a matter of fact, Janelle is going ahead and doing one reread on it right now. So it'd probably take her several days to go through it and just do little, putting her signature on it, just putting a little edits here and there and things like that in it. I'm always happy to have her read it because she does that kind of stuff for a living. So it's good to catch the little stuff. And it's going to go to an editor anyway when it goes to the publisher. So that way it gets double whammied. And then they send it back to me once they get it all set. Or typeset, as I like to call it. It comes back to me again for another read. So there you go. But we're moving. It's going. I worked on photographs for the last 4 days, I guess. Yeah, at least the last 4 days. I've got this cool little photo box I bought years ago for the first book that allows me to. It's a lighted effects box that you put objects in and then set your cameras up to take pictures of them. It's really cool. And that allows me to do lure shots, any lines, knots, anything that I've included in there outside of outdoor photographs, which are also included, obviously. This book will be in color, and it's going to have lots of pretty pictures because I like adding pretty pictures to fishing books. When I buy a fishing book, I like seeing great photography in the book, and so there you go. What's today? Today is Sunday. I'm saying another week at least of rereads and stuff before I send it to the publisher. And then things happen pretty fast after that. So maybe, oh no, I told you I wasn't going to do that. I'm not going to do a date. I made a mistake of doing this. It'll be out this summer. Yeah, right. It wasn't, obviously. But at least the devotion there on it is happening now because I haven't been able to fish a lot. So that keeps me home, quite frankly. And I don't like house cleaning, so I'd rather work on the book. But the weather has kept me off the water. And in a weird way, that's been good for getting the book done in the wintertime, which is probably what I should have done in the first place instead of even trying to mess with it during summer months. And I'm trying to get this all done before spring comes because I know what happens down here in the spring. And if you don't, you should book a fishing trip down this way because it's most enjoyable when you start to get to April and May, that's for sure. The book has a tentative title of What I Know About Fishing the Florida Keys. Yes, the first book was What I Know About Fishing Southwest Florida. So kind of in line with that. It's I don't want to call it the same because it's really not. It's the same but different. I rewrote it. I took segments from the first book for my ideas and my outlines, but I basically rewrote. I have to. Fishing in the Keys is not like fishing Southwest Florida. Well, some of it is. The backwater flats for redfish, snook, and sea trout, for example, are relatively the same down here. You just have a much, much, much larger body of water to deal with, and several bodies to deal with. You have the Florida Bay, the Gulf of Mexico, and the Atlantic Ocean, and then you have all the little tributaries and little creeks and all the little bays and bayous and whatever else is down here, sounds, things like that. So I've tried to cover it all, and it ain't easy. I'm not kidding you. And to be perfectly honest, this book is about what I know about fishing the Florida Keys. It is not an authoritative book. It is not going out and doing lots of interviews with other fishermen. I really wanted to write a book that was more about what it takes to learn to fish in the Keys and give you some tips on places to start. Because I tell you what, if you're a Floridian and you live anywhere in Florida and you haven't fished the Keys, you have no idea what you're missing. This week's podcast title is basically Cooking Your Catch. It just popped into my head because we do quite a bit of seafood, whether I catch it or not. And listen, in some cases, I fish for entertainment, quite frankly. I don't fish to fill a cooler. If I go out in the Atlantic, which has not been possible for the last several months due to my timing and the wind's timing, but hopefully I'll get out there again this spring. I'll look for food out there. I try to get some yellowtail snapper, mangrove snapper, mutton, something off the bottom that's good that it's hiding in the reef, grouper, whatever I can get, and it's sizable. I'm going to put it in the cooler with the ice and bring it home for dinner. I'm not trying to load the freezer up. So you have to understand my take on fishing is more of an entertainment type thing. and a getaway. It is a place to get away. For those of you that don't fish, you just have no idea. Um, uh, it just cleans the brain. You really can't think about it. It's a mind eraser. You can't really think about much. You kind of concentrate on what you're doing, and then every now and then you kick back and just enjoy what's around you. And I think that's what makes fishing in the Keys so enjoyable. It's a pretty place. It's a beautiful place on top of everything else. But then I got to thinking about the cook to catch thing, and I thought, we go to the fishmongers and we do buy fish here in the Keys. By the way, that's cheaper than taking a fishing trip, in case you were wondering. You could probably do 3 or 4 restaurants in the cost of a fishing trip nowadays. Not saying you shouldn't do it, but just so you know. And typically what we buy is mahi, yellowtail. I do buy salmon if I can get cold water salmon from way, way, way up north somewhere. I like cooking salmon on the grill. I really do. And then there's a lot of other stuff too that we do. We do shrimp, stone crabs, lobster, Florida lobster, things like that. And right now, stone crabs and Florida lobster are both in season. So that's something that always, I go into the fish place and I look at the fish sitting there and I'll look over and I see a Florida lobster and I go, oh man, I probably want to get a couple of those. That's really what I want to cook up. So I'm going to give you some cooking tips on the fish that you might catch or the stuff that you might buy. And I'm going to start by saying this: fresh is good. Work hard to find the best supply of fish you can, regardless of where you are. In Florida, it's fairly easy. Everywhere we've lived, we've always had 1 or 2 of those really just go-to fish spots that you go to purchase fish from. The place that I like here is the Fish House. It's a restaurant. It's right down the street from us. We go in there for very enjoyable dinners by ourselves and with our friends. We love the bar staff in there. The bar staff is very friendly, and sitting at the bar and eating and drinking is you catch up on all the Keys news. But the one thing they have in there is they have a fish market. Those people bring in fish fresh every single day to serve in the restaurant. And guess what? After about 10 o'clock in the morning, 11 o'clock in the morning, you can go in there and buy that fish right out of the ice case. It's just really weird. This is one of those places you go in and what you're getting is like the freshest thing possible, whether it's grouper, yellowtail, mahi, anything along those, and including their salmon. They do import salmon daily, and it's, oh my gosh, and of course lobster and shrimp and all the other things that you might want. Stone crabs are all very, very fresh. So we just go down there. Their price is right. It's not pricey. I mean, seafood isn't cheap. It's not steak. It's not like filet mignon in the grocery store right now. But still, you can get away with, for a couple, we typically cook 3/4 of a pound to 1 pound. And we know that if we cook 1 pound of fish between the 2 of us, we'll have some leftover to make dip the next night. So we can always take whatever leftover fish there is, put it in the fridge, bring it out with a little mayo and whatnot, and just mix it up and make a dip for the next night on crackers. So there is that. Tips for cooking. I almost said fishing again. Tips for cooking, yes. I'm going to start by saying this. I already started. Get it fresh. We know that part. As fresh as possible. If you got to do a sniff test, do it. Don't be afraid. I mean, if they're standing there selling you a piece of fish, it shouldn't smell real, real fishy. Plain and simple. You'll know when it ain't right. Cooking it is basically don't overcook, and which for some people is really hard. You're not trying to make the fish rare. Medium rare is nice for like salmon and especially for tuna. You're cooking blackfin tuna, yellowfin, something like that you've either caught or bought. Then obviously rare is a good idea in that particular fish. But most of them you're going to cook it to sort of medium. You want the flesh to be flaky. You want it to be juicy. You don't want it to be dried out. You just don't do it. And adjust your times. It may take you a time or two to learn what your stove or your grill is capable of doing. I grill almost all of our fish. We really don't put anything in the oven. We pan saute some stuff, which is really easy to keep track of when you're sauteing on top of the stove on a little butter or something. You can put a fork in it and give it a little twist, what I call the twist test. Stick a fork, give it a twist. The meat should break away freely and easily, and it's done. If it doesn't break, it isn't done yet. That's pretty much it. And if you let it go too long, it gets overdone. So you can do the same thing on the grill. Grilling, really, temperature wise, I've got a little grill. Mine's not very big. It's not one of those mammoth things with cookers on the side and all that, and 18 bottles of propane. It's just a regular old little grill. It's a little Weber. It's great. I love it, actually. I think it's called a Q2000 or a 2020 or something like that. It's a two-person grill. There you go. Although you can cook 8 to 10 hamburgers on it. When that thing's set to medium, the temperature that I read off of, it's about 350. And that's about what you want for fish. If you turn it up too high, if you want to crisp the outside of a fish, you can raise it up, put the fish on to kind of crisp it, then turn it way down and get it so the center's done but not overdone. You can always do that. But most of the time I cook our fish at 350. Turn it one time. I use a special pan for the fish. It's a little gripper pan that keeps the fillet inside of like a rack, so you don't have to scoop it to flip it. And I'm going to say if I put a piece of fish on right now, I probably would not do more than 7 or 8 minutes on a side. So you're talking 14 to 16 total minutes for a standard piece of fillet. Longer if I'm cooking salmon, because salmon's thick. So I'm going to say maybe 8 to 10 a side, but I'm going to watch it carefully on that second side. So just to kind of give you a temperature idea. Skin on or skin off? I hear that a lot. Some skin does not taste good, so you don't cook the fish in the skin. Some does. Some crisp and taste quite yummy. Back to salmon. When I do salmon, I always leave the skin on. When I drop it on the grill let me back up a little. Seasoning wise, I might put a little lemon on it, salt and pepper, and that's basically it. There are all kinds of wonderful little fishy type spices that you can use for fish, specifically for fish. And it's just like, you just go and you pick up something off the spice rack and just check it out. I always like to take a whiff of it if I can to see if I approve. But generally anything that's more or less like lemony based, citrus based is usually pretty good on most fish. But most of the time, just a little bit of lemon and salt and pepper. You can also put a little butter on there if you want to. Melt a little butter and spread a little butter on the fish. But remember, butter burns, so you got to be careful. Don't put too much on there if you're going to plop it on the grill. I do spice it up a little bit. It's fun that way. Now, as far as the skin goes, for example, salmon, I'll cook it flesh side down first. So we'd call that the top side, and put the meat on the grill first, and do 7, 8 minutes on that side. Then I flip it over and put skin side down and cook it the rest of the way till it's done. The reason I do it that way is because, honestly, the skin will stick to the grill when you're getting ready to take the fish off, and you don't eat the skin on salmon, not generally. And you can put a spatula between the meat and the skin, and the meat will just come right off and go right on in the house, on a plate, and you don't have to worry about it. And then later on when the grill cools, you can go get the skin off, pull the skin off of the grill. So, ta-da, there you go. I do a lot of frying. I love to fry fish. It doesn't love me, but I love to fry fish. I make little fish fingers and little fish nuggets and things like that. I love doing it with a fish that everyone says doesn't taste good, Spanish mackerel. There's a lot of other fish along the bluefish, things along those lines that people go, they turn their nose up when you say it. That stuff is pretty good when it comes right out of the ocean or Gulf of Mexico, and you batter it and you put it on little Crisco oil in a cast iron skillet. You'd be amazed how good it is. And it cooks really, really fast. You have to remember that when you're going to deep fry fish, it's going to be way under the time that it would take to bake it or put it on the grill. We're talking minutes for a completed piece of fish, a chunk of fish. And then my wife makes wonderful homemade tartar sauce, so there you go. Yeah, there's a secret in the tartar sauce, though. One word: Duke's. Yeah, that's our. I don't want to call it mayonnaise because it's not mayonnaise. It's Duke's. If you haven't tried Duke's, do it. Boy, it makes great slaw. Tuna fish sandwiches. Whatever you mix that stuff with is just excellent. In my opinion, it is the best made. Delicious. So that's used by us a lot, especially in fish recipes and things like that, especially if she's making tartar. There's no doubt about that. So quick review, pan sauteed, pan fried, and grilled. I mean, that's pretty much what we do around the house on most pieces of fish. If it's a little skinny piece, or if it's flaky like yellowtail, you got to be more careful with how you handle the fish, especially if you're going to try to grill it. You might be better off sauteing it. Some of that fish will just flake up something terrible on a grill, while others don't. I think my favorite piece of fish on the grill is swordfish. If you can get a fresh piece, you can get it down here. It depends on where you live, in Florida or elsewhere. But if you can get a fresh piece of swordfish, there's nothing much better on the grill. You don't need to put it in a pan. You don't need to set it on full. You can basically just put it right on the grill and put the grill marks on it. It comes out like a white piece of steak. Again, and you got to be careful. Don't want to overcook it. You can dry out swordfish pretty badly if you're not careful. But oh gosh, I love that. I think that's probably my favorite grilled fish. And down here we get a lot of mahi, dolphin fish. Yeah, I know. We say that down here. Oh, we got some dolphin last night. Yeah, boy, the tourists will look at you like, what? And you have to explain to them that that's actually what a mahi is called. It's dolphin fish. And and they'll probably go look it up. They get their phone and start tapping on it to make sure we're not lying. But mahi's great, and mahi's reasonably priced. I think I'm not sure about up north if you shop for it in other states, but I know in Florida it's probably one of the more reasonably priced fish. Although all fish has gone up, it costs money to go get it, and fuel's up. And when those guys fuel up those big old boats to go out there and get fish for our local restaurants and mongers and things like that, it costs more. So plain and simple. Florida pink shrimp, best shrimp on the planet, in my opinion. You get whatever you can get. The trick to shrimp is, I've said this before about fish, don't overcook it. That's pretty much it. If you're going to boil shrimp at home and then put it on ice for dipping, making shrimp cocktail out of, get the shrimp, leave it in the shell. You're probably going to get some that are heads off. If you do get it whole, pop the heads off. Although some people say the head adds flavor. Whatever, doesn't bother me, but some people don't. I don't know. They're like, what? You want to take the shrimp, bring the water to a full boil. I like to put a pack of seasoning in there. There's several manufacturers that make make the little seasoning box. It's got a little bag in it. Throw that in the hot water and let it boil for a little bit to get some flavoring. Then put the shrimp in. The shrimp will cook for about 2 to 3 minutes max. You don't throw it in and then turn your back on it and go do something else. Shrimp will be done while you stand there and watch, and then you're going to throw it in a colander, get the water off of it as quickly as possible, and then put it on ice as quickly as possible. So when I cook shrimp, I got the boiling water, I got my shrimp, I got the ice standing by in a little bucket type thing, and cook up the shrimp. Run it through the colander, squirt cold water all over it out of the tap real fast to help cool it down, and then throw ice all over the top of it and let it drain in the sink with the ice on top. And that will usually cool it off right away. If you don't do that, the shrimp's going to keep right on cooking. If it's hot, you take it away, it's just going to keep cooking, so you got to stop it from doing that. Dip is up to you. I mean, I'm the classic cocktail dip. Little ketchup, some horseradish, some Worcestershire, some spices of some kind mixed in, maybe just a touch of mustard. Janelle doesn't like the mustard in it. I do. And then just stir it up and let it rip. A little hot sauce, put a little crystal sauce in it, stuff like that. Whatever you can take. It's good for cleaning the sinuses out if you put enough horseradish in it. Stone crab claws, you don't cook them. You buy them cooked. They're already cooked. They're already iced down. When you go get stone crab claws here in Florida, you go to the fish store, restaurant, doesn't matter. They're done. They're already done. They're on ice. All you got to do is pick up a little carton of their special super duper mustard sauce, which usually is sold at the same counter that sells stone crabs with, and have the power to crack them when you get home. Small wooden hammers and mallets work great. I don't know, any type of. I use a big spoon. You can hold a stone crab claw in the palm of your hand just right and whack it with the back of a large soup spoon. Big spoon, you get that thing cracked, it's going to come right open. So there's a Florida boy tip for you. But you can use nutcrackers and all kinds of stuff. If you haven't had it, try it. Stone crab's delicious. Of course, that's down here in Florida. I don't think you're going to be able to find it up north unless you pay a ridiculous price for it. And we already pay a ridiculous price for it down here. Last but certainly not least is Florida lobster. And there's always this argument when lobster season comes around down here, and I guess it's August when we have our mini season, and then it goes, crazy from that point on until, you know what, I don't know when season ends. I really don't. I'd have to go look it up. I know stone crab is over in May, but I'm not sure about spiny lobster. But this is a Caribbean lobster, spiny lobster, Bahamian lobster, Florida lobster. It's all pretty much the same thing. This is a clawless lobster. It's a tail only. Delicious. I find them, I don't get me wrong, I love Maine lobster. I think that the Florida lobster is sweeter. And for me, it tastes better because it's sweeter. But you're not eating the claws or any of that kind of stuff because there aren't any. And the best way to cook it is grill it. I've done it a bunch of different, obviously in the oven, things like that when the weather doesn't permit. But the grill is just the easiest way to go. You're going to take that tail, and you get the tail only, and you're going to split it down the back with a big, sharp, like kitchen knife, one of those great big butchery type kitchen knives. Cut it all the way down the back, split it open so it's splayed out. Put it on, get it ready, set for the grill. Put a couple tabs of butter in the middle of it. And really, you can put a few little spicy things in there if you want to, but I wouldn't recommend it. Butter's fine. On the grill, typically close to 15 minutes. If the grill is around, set about halfway up, set about 350 to 400 degrees. You don't turn it or anything. You just set it on the grill, leg side down, and just let it go. You'll know when it's done. The meat turns real white. It just whitens right up when it's ready. Pop it off the grill, bust it out of the shell, and have at it. And I just made myself terribly hungry. If you got specific questions about specific fish or cooking something you're not sure about, or most anything, because I've cooked fish for a very long time, email me, catchyououtdoors@gmail.com. I'd be happy to answer any emails I get. If you happen to know my personal email, you can use that as well.
And now, from the original book of useless information.
You are a reject! You are useless! You can get a job down here cleaning toilets!
Here's your host, Captain Rob Modies.
Well, he swears up and down he's useless, but
he might be all right eventually, but completely useless.
With useless information.
This is going to be interesting because I'm going to do this on the fly too. I have this wonderful book. Let's start with this since we were talking about seafood in general. The female American oyster lays an average of 500 million eggs a year. Usually only one oyster out of the bunch reaches maturity. Holy moly. Okay, now this one's really short, but to the point. Number 2. I usually do 3 of these, so let's see. There are more species of fish than mammals, reptiles, and birds combined. Should be easy to catch fish, right? Of course. And continuing along with the, seafoody type water sort of thing. Walking catfish of Florida can stay out of water for 80 days. Not 8 days. Not like a week. 80 days. I had no idea. I've seen those things. They're creepy. Really, really creepy. Oh, heck, I've got time left. I'm going to give you a fourth one. Only 30% of the famous Maryland blue crabs are actually from Maryland. The rest are from North Carolina and Virginia. So there you go. By the way, we catch blue crabs down here too, and they're also quite yummy. Okay, people. Spend a little time outside, would you? If you can. Layer up if you have to. Extra jacket, maybe a sweater or something. Like down here, man, we're back. Honestly, we're pretty much back to T-shirts, which I'm thrilled about. Soon, all of us will be longing for cooler weather, so I really don't want to poo-poo the fact that we're finally having some, cold fronts and things like that, because I know once we get rolling to summer, August is going to arrive, and in September, I'm going to be going, man, when are we going to get that first cold front? But try to get there, enjoy yourself. If you get a chance, come down to the Keys, man. It's beautiful down here. Thank you for tuning in. Thanks to those that continue to support my podcast over the past few years. I really, really appreciate that. If you enjoy listening, please tell a friend, leave a review, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Facebook page is Catchy Outdoors, website catchyoutdoors.com, where you can find all the previous podcasts and a schedule of what's to come. Until next time, get outdoors and enjoy.